The mystic archetype. In today's session, I'm going to explore and talk a little bit about the light and shadow aspects of the mystic and what the mystic archetype, how does the mystic archetype show up in us in an individual level and also at a collective level. What can the mystic archetype teach us? And why is the mystic archetype in many ways very strong right now? My name is Eileen Burns. I'm a soul empowerment coach, I'm a healer, a therapist. I'm also a spiritual business strategist. And one of the things that I'm really, really passionate about is helping people go more soul deep in their own life, in their work, and in their purpose. And because I'm more, I regard myself as more a spiritual business and someone who has a strong interest in certain spiritual aspects, I would say, like many of us in the spiritual field, I have a connection to the mystic archetype. In many ways, we all do have connections, but some things are more obvious than others. But if you look at the mystic archetype from its light aspect, the mystic archetype represents that connection, that divine connection to mysticism, to the spiritual mystical experiences. And what that can mean, because sometimes people get, can be maybe a lot of misunderstanding and even sometimes myths, but it's something beyond ourselves in some level, that it's when you have a mystical experience, that's probably the easiest way to explain it. If you have a spiritual experience or a mystical experience, you have an experience that often goes beyond what a reality is at that point. That what, and if we're living an everyday life and things that may appear logical or realistic, the mystical or spiritual experience is often beyond that. It's something that comes out of nowhere that we don't expect. Now, I'm saying that there is also, I work with a lot of people, healers, and people are regarded as very highly intuitive, and some people maybe regard themselves as psychic and whatever. And even though I would say I'm very intuitive and have certain experiences myself, I know a lot of people who've had what they would regard as highly mystical or spiritual experiences since a child that on some way was normal for them. And we can all have these experiences to different degrees. For example, I meet people who have saw in their eyes angels from a young age and had all sorts of experiences where they could experience things on a day-to-day basis that most of us maybe didn't have those experiences. And we all can have different intuitive and spiritual experiences through our life that just do seem to come out of nowhere and can create a life changing, because at some level it shifts our reality. And I've had a few experiences, and one experience that made a huge shift in me was an experience that I had when I was in intensive care and I was in a coma. And it was not an experience that I planned. It was not how I would have imagined it, having an experience like that, because it's very interesting. As someone who's trained in healing for over 30 years, nearly 35 years, one of the things that I would say is quite interesting is that, people can have an idea on they kind of conjure up what a mystical or a spiritual experience should look like and what it feels like. And often people that haven't had those experiences have this interpretation in their head, how it shows up, how it appears, and often it can be very different from what you believe it should be or how it's going to happen, because it would be a mystical or spiritual experience in many ways, because it's not a controlled experience. It's an experience that comes out of nowhere, that you don't expect it, you're not looking for it. Now, where the light aspect of the mystic archetype is someone that is on a path of, in many ways, a very disciplined path to live that spiritual life, and they go really, really deeply. And if we just look at Caroline's, Maisie's cards, or Maisie's cards, always pronounce her name, I think slightly wrong, but anyway, the light archetype, the light of the mystic archetype tends to really revel in intimate union with the divine. So it's a deep, deep passion for that spiritual connection with the divine. And often people that have been on that spiritual and mystical experience for a very long time, there's something very deep, this yearning that has made that almost a large part of their focus. And if you look at, even though we wouldn't say that spiritual and a mystical experience needs, is related or needs to be related to religion, there is people who become religious, who are making that connection to the divine, or seeking that connection to the divine. If you see things like priests, nuns, monks, all this kind of thing, and also other types of religions where people are almost giving their life over to a divine or mystical experience, a spiritual experience. Their drive and their passion for that connection is so strong that they are willing to hand over their life to experience that spiritual connection and that spiritual experience now. And the shadow element of that is when you look at when someone has a delusional rapport with the divine, where they think they have a connection, but it's based on false. They don't really have a connection. It's maybe mostly in their head, or maybe sometimes I suppose it could be that you're just scratching the surface, or you're missing the point of what that divine connection actually is. Now, some of the examples I think that you could probably use in relation to this is where the spiritual industry is at this point. You've got two polarities going on, and I've seen this, coming for a long, long time. But if you've looked at one of the things that I've seen rapidly over the last 10 years, particularly, a lot of us who've been into the healing work and therapy work and coaching work, a lot of us have went in from certain ages having this deep desire and knowing that this is part of our mission. And we do it for a sense of service to others. There's something at a soul level's guiding us. And it's not about the money, it's not about certain things, it's about this. We know at a soul level that they will all have come in to do some of this work. And part of that is this connection also to the mystic. There's something it drives. So it tends to kind of take over in life in many ways, and a lot part of our life, because it's such a strong aspect, particularly people that really, really dive deep into the spiritual aspects, and they make it not just part of their job, but they make it part of their everyday life and the way that they live their life. It takes up a big paramount thing. But now we have created, unfortunately, in the world of consumerism and marketing, I've seen a huge shift, as I said, particularly in the last 10 years. I'm not saying it has been paramount, it has been paramount for a while, but it will get more obvious the last 10 years, is this kind of oversaturation of where people just enter the spiritual arena because they think it's the in thing. It's the thing that is going to make them money. It's the thing that people seek, that want. It's an easy way to, unfortunately nowadays a lot of things are at a very fast track, and people can train up in things and just turn up after a couple of days courses or a couple of months, and the next they're starting up a business and supporting people in some ways. And I'm not saying that's all, because some things, there is some things out there that people can support people quite quickly, but also there's this kind of almost like the easiest way I would explain it is like something being manufactured, and it's just so quickly and so processed so quickly that there's always people coming off this belt, this manufactured belt, and they're just throwing things out. And there's you can meet a lot of people. Unfortunately, I'm lucky that I do work with lots of beautiful healers, and people that are very dedicated to the passion and spend often many years before they even actually go into practice, really mastering some of their tools and their trades. But I also sometimes meet people that are very early in their journey that are only focused on just to be making the money. And it's one of the reasons why I changed a lot of things of how I do business so that I don't attract that type of client. But with that is this sometimes an illusion of being for the divine, but missing the point of what that connection truly means. They're only at the surface, and they say the right things, they use the right words, they talk about the right things, and they say words that sound spiritual and divine, and they maybe do tools and techniques, but the reality is there is no depth to it. And that's, that is the opposite. And this is where people can go in the spiritual field. It's very easy for us all to not do the work and just to show up and to take people's money. So the opposite of the mystic is someone who will exploit someone else for their own financial or other type of gain. And I'll just explain, I'll just use some of the words that Caroline, and then I'll go into and explain it in other ways that I think is relevant to some of the stuff that I do and what my audience, obviously are usually interested in. Is if you look at the shadow mystic, right, it manifests as self-importance and an egocentric concern for one's own spiritual progress to the exclusion of others, who is not there. So it's only interested about the self, but not about the collective or supporting other people and helping them go on that journey, right? Or they take huge advantage of other people, for financial gain, or for, unfortunately, other sexual benefits. We see this with people who are maybe start up cults and things. And it's, when we look at even people's spiritual journeys, everybody's spiritual journey is very different. Like, I've got a friend who spent many years working with who would be classed as a top Chinese master, someone really, what would people would be saying, he learned so much for this woman, and he would get up very early in the morning, extraordinary. I think it was 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. He would get up and every day for quite a few years and worked with this woman, and was disciplined because his soul at that point wanted to connect at a more deeper level, and he wanted to learn, right? And this is where the spiritual journey, it's not a hobby. It's not about the true mystic. It's someone who takes the journey very seriously and wants to evolve and grow and build that connection first for themselves, right? And share what they're learning and share what they're exploring with. It's not a stunted, it's a constant progress, and it's a constant expansion. So the mystic is open to other beliefs, other things that are maybe not in their present reality, right? When the mystic gets stuck, when the shadow element comes in, it can come in that it thinks it knows everything, and it knows, it's got it all sussed out, and it wants to stay exactly where they are and with the learning they've got or how they see the world. where the light aspect of the mystic is open to beyond the physical realm that they see right now. And this is sometimes why we do have spiritual experiences. We have experiences to take us into a new way of seeing the world. And I know my own experience, even though I thrived on, and my soul wanted to, it felt it needed more in it. There was a lot of things that, there's so many reasons I discovered wasn't quite, there's so many questions and there's so many experiences. And I met a lot of other healers who did the same. They moved beyond certain modalities or did other teachings because certain things didn't maybe add up, or they weren't seeing maybe certain things just were not maybe the full picture. But I have to be honest, I knew that there were certain things that I was probably stuck in my own fear, my own trauma, my own belief systems. I was brought up Catholic, and I think there was a lot of fear and guilt and shame about things that were, so there was a lot of fear, even though at some level my soul knew there was more, and I was open in many levels. There was other areas I wasn't. And when I had this experience, it was one experience that went on to kind some other experiences, and there was other experiences within the scenario. And it shifted my reality in so many ways. It shifted it in one, the experience was not how, if someone explained it to me, would not be how I would have thought it would have been. But it also was so unexpected. It was life-changing. The impact it had me was life-changing, but also, which sometimes people don't have with mystical experiences, I had also something else, that there was a reality aspect to it, that there was an evidence. There was some of the experience that I had some evidence that related to spiritual experience while I was unconscious to something else that was happening on a reality level, right? Which was almost like it gave me practical evidence plus mystical and spiritual evidence, right? Now, the mystic archetype is actually quite strong sometimes in a lot of alchemist archetypes, but there can be a mix-up, and there can be almost like a distortion with the mystic and the alchemist, and people can get confused by both. Because if we look at the alchemist has the ability, but let's look at the alchemist card. So look at the alchemist, okay. So the alchemist, if we just look at just briefly, the light and shadow. The light is about transformational base motives and goals into golden wisdom, right? So the alchemist has this ability to see anything that is sometimes in the shadow, or a problem or a challenge, and can see the potential in that going the opposite, so out of the darkness it can see light. Something that someone maybe have a problem that they think there's maybe no hope, they can see the magic and the miracles, right? And often they can be the catalyst in relation to either just what they say or what they do or what the space they hold. They can help the client or the person create that shift, because it's always the individual in some level, right? Okay. Now, obviously, different alchemists have different tools. Right? And one of the things that I found really, really fascinating in my journey was because when I first started on my healing journey, I was just very fortunate to work with a man that would heal things very quickly for people that would technically, medical doctors would say couldn't be healed, right? For certain things. I'm not saying everything, but there were certain things. And, having that as your first experience is someone, actually raises the bar in some level. So I found it interesting on one level, because other people that were doing some of the modalities that he was using, it just didn't really ever feel like you were getting the same. That's the truth. Even though I do understand from an energetic perspective, everybody's got their essence, there was never that shift. I remember someone that was close to him, that's all I'm going to say, who did the healing modality as well. He would tell you that he had a gift before he'd done this healing modality. So there was something else. I would dread, I don't want this person near me because I actually didn't feel any energy of this person, which, you know, a lot of people would argue that shouldn't happen, but there was something odd going on there. So, and I have my ideas what could have been going on now, didn't then. I wasn't sure what was going on. But one of the things I also saw in my own students, I taught, as a healer, I was a Reiki master and teacher. But one of the things I was fascinated with so many different types of healing modalities, and everybody talks about everything being, the one source and connection. What struck me, why were they so different in the way that they taught, their connection, the channel, how they felt, and some of the results that they tend to get. And also one of the things I was also through the years was how things, symbology and certain things and the processes that people used, because many types of modalities will use certain processes and other people wouldn't use certain types of processes. There's a whole different way. And also how what the therapist or the healer has to do. Some modalities don't really expect them to do much, when other modalities will expect a certain or someone to be at a certain level before they do certain types of work. I found that all fascinating. But one of the things that I found interesting was also how much people really dive in their spiritual journey and really go and do the work. And I don't mean just do like self-healing, I don't mean that, really dive deep on a spiritual level and go deep and seek more spiritually in a spiritual union with the self and what I think is God or the divine, this connection. And how many people just show up for work and just do what they're doing to help people. There was very different variations to that. And the more I've, grew in my own awareness and knowledge, is recognised that, some people that had stronger really had the mystic and the divine, and they tend to be completely service to others, and they knew that this was completely their work, but not just about showing up in their work. First of all, doing the work themselves and really taking their mystical journey, their spiritual journey seriously, seeking more of that connection, right? Now, I do believe we all are here with different purposes, maybe different stages of a journey. Sometimes we can stay at one aspect of the journey and then something can happen and shift us. Sometimes we go through a certain period and then it's not till maybe the nearer end age of our life, then we rapidly change. Or some people's souls, they're there to stay. And it's not that I'm not saying that one aspect of his journey is better than another. That's not what I'm saying. But it's like, the easiest way I could explain it is like, why does, someone goes and leaves school and they don't really have a need or a care or a desire to go into further education, but someone else will do PhD, maybe do 2 or 3 PhDs. Everybody has, different paths to go. The aspect of the mystic archetype is that the mystic is even Caroline puts it, right? Is that, are you ready to pay the price in blood, sweat, and tears? Because the true mystic is willing to make that the priority of their life. Now, one of the things that she says, which I totally agree with, is we've seen such a shift in the spiritual world that many people put a price tag on how their purpose or their mission comes. So they only want their mission or their purpose to come if they get the car, get a certain income, and it comes with these certain tags or these certain things. And they're not really willing to really completely surrender the ego to what their purpose is. And to me, the mystic is someone that actually, there is an aspect of that involves surrender. It doesn't have that attachment to all the things that people put on. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I think what can happen is when people have this attachment to how their purpose, their journey should look like, they can get so caught in the 3D world that they lose what that connection truly is. Some of the most spiritual people that I know have, and people that have transcended, have lost everything at times in their life. Now, a lot of them have maybe gained certain things, but they tend not to have this over attachment to things because they're so in that connection. And I'm not, and again, I know that's maybe not for everyone, but the mystic is, it goes beyond, it is living for the spiritual experiences, right? And it surrenders to something that is beyond themselves. And the mystical experiences are not always tangible. And sometimes in the spiritual world, it's very easy for people to try and describe them and to be tangible. And one of the other things that I have to add here is, and this is one of the things that I discovered, was many people that have not actually had certain spiritual experiences themselves or had their own type can tell people how they should experience something or how, what shape or form, when the reality is that completely goes against what a mystical or spiritual experience is. Because the whole point of a spiritual mystical experience is something that you don't expect. Is that something, it's something coming out of nowhere, and it's a nudge from, you know, spirit or God divine to me that is really strong, and it comes in and it has a message. Now, sometimes that message, the whole understanding of that message may not be clear at that point, because that is, it comes out so much out of your reality. And sometimes it's usually to some of the things happen. I know for me, I've had lots of different types of experiences through years, but you know, that one was one that stood out because of something, it shifted something really deep within me that needed to be shifted. It was probably, part of it was not really putting myself first, but there was something deeper there. But one of the things that happened out of that experience was there was some of it I couldn't make sense of, and some of it was just so beyond my reality that even though it shifted something in me and it made me more open, there were some aspects of it that I didn't fully understand till recently, and understood why lots of things had happened in my journey that other people had judgments of, which were just their judgments. And the mystical experience is something that the more that we surrender to the divine, the more that we dedicate our life, and I'm going to say purpose, because if you truly want to be, for example, if you see yourself as a spiritual teacher, I don't tend to see myself as a spiritual teacher. Some people do. I just like to share. I would say maybe more maybe a mentor, and maybe just some of the tools and my approaches. But in any way, in this type of work, when we're doing this type of work and we're trying to lead by example and do what we can to help others, we want to build that deep mystical experience with the self and with divine, with God, so that we can be a clear channel, so that we can, you know, we're seeking truth, we're seeking purpose behind our life, we're seeking purpose, you know, in life itself. And you don't get the answers of these things from other people. There can, some things can come and make you shift and help you look at things, but it's an inward thing. And when we're on the spiritual journey and we are supporting other people, we have to go inwards. If we're only focusing on just getting the money or just getting the certificates or just getting our business, we miss the point. And I think the mystic archetype is a really good archetype to remind us about going inwards. And it reminds us how we can get lost in this material world. One of the things I think as well is that when more people are put into fear, when there's a lot of fear, we're seeing this at the moment, a lot of push because of certain things happening in relation to, well, any of these that are awake knows what's going on in the collective. There's a lot of push to try and put the masses into fear and into polarity. A lot of games being played and designed to put people into fear. And this is not about taking people away from the practicalities of life, because there's sometimes in everything in life, we can allow mystical experiences and spiritual experiences can help us put things into practice, and it can help us with practical things. So don't think that just because something's a mystical or a spiritual experiences, it's so out of our 3D that it's not relative. We can lots of experiences that actually help form better practical and help us guide us towards practical solutions. I've had lots of experiences where things were just going terribly wrong and things were so stacked against me, and then a spiritual experience would provide a solution, would provide something I would never have expected and help me go down that path. And the mystical experience is in many ways so much beyond ourselves, but we cannot have those experiences if we're so closed and so fixed in our ideology, if we're hanging on to the old, if we're trying to control what our sole purpose and our sole mission is. Because I do believe that purpose and passion, things like that, there can be threads of people's purpose, and that tends to evolve. But a lot of people are so focused on getting the ego, trying to control it all about their purpose and their mission and have it all figured out, that they miss the point of what a spiritual and a real true soul purpose and their life purpose is. It goes beyond that. And the mystic archetype has so much to teach us and remind us about the divine, that there is always more that we don't know and understand, because the universe is so wide and big, and there's so many aspects of that. And even if you think about even being a mother, many of you will be mothers, and I've not had the honour to do that, but many of you will be mothers or fathers. And if you think that you have the mystical experience of giving birth, the mother giving birth and are having that child within them, giving life and being able to deliver and allow this child into the world, that is in one level a mystical and spiritual experiences, because it never goes really quite how you would imagine, but it's unique in each experience. But it's also that point of conception, no matter what you're planning, unless it's more, it's done pharmaceutically or done like in that kind of way. There's an aspect of nature and something that happens. To me, there's a spiritual phenomenon there, because you are bringing in a new soul, right? Now, I do believe that the more that we seek the spiritual life, the more that we seek that connection, we can start to have more spiritual and mystical experiences. It becomes, in many ways, a way of life. But the reality is sometimes it's been discerning what is and what's not, and what is maybe sometimes false light. That's a whole other thing. But the reality is, to me, it's about connection here. Many people want to be more intuitive, want to be more psychic, and they want to have all these guides, but they have very, very little connection with themselves, and they don't really work on that true divine mystical connection. They're being honest with themselves. They don't really dedicate that practice. And it's a great reminder about how, if you want to be more of the mystic archetype, if you want to bring true spiritual sacredness into your life and into your business, it does take that a bit of, as she said, blood, sweat, and tears. Maybe not quite the blood, hopefully, but one of the things I would say is think about what price tag or what attachment. So sometimes it might not be a price tag, but your ego may want something to come in a certain way, and it's all to do with how your connection with your root and how you think. That is to do with security. You're not fully feeling into it in a soul level, and it's about being able to surrender and trust. And many of the people that have surrendered and trust and get out of the way of that attachment actually have brought amazing things to them that they never would imagine. And remember, you as a living soul are That's sacred. You are the mystical experience being on earth. And it's so important to remember that. If you enjoy this video and you would like to see more, please like, subscribe, even share. Check out my free resources and courses. If you would like some support, check out information below. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye for now.